Hey, Laura J., founder of Peaceful Inner Warriors United, here with an important invitation for you. Whether we have met through the Soulshine Festival community, whether it is through Druthers, whether it is through the John Maxwell team, whether it was through Neil Jard Remedies Organic, whether it was from any of the opportunities that I have been involved with as to why I came into that group in order to meet you who are finding this message to receive this invitation, you are the reason I joined that community. I wanted this call to kind of just be where we start bringing community together. We also lay out what needs to happen in January. So there are efforts being made, including this afternoon. Sheila with the POG Primer is having a call where they're talking about taking action. And I want to help actually make the action real by taking the suits off and actually making it so that we're addressing people in their private capacity, which is what I'm laying out in the course. So I wanted to have an unboxing of that today, but it's not entirely complete because I'm still moving the story pieces around. But I'm also aware that I'm not the only one with story pieces because Rose has a lot of pieces that I don't have. For instance, Dawn, you have with your experience of life and all that you've been involved with. So when we start to come together, even when it seems to be a small number who are joining forces in the beginning, I think it's really powerful for us to be able to come together and share the pieces that we do have to be able to paint the fuller picture as to how we got into this mess in the first place, but then actually what we're going to do about it, not from a disempowered perspective, but from the empowered perspective instead. So that's kind of the intention for this call. Rose, would you be willing to share the art piece that I just commissioned you to do for me as a soul painting and then talk about that? Because I think it'll really give a lot of context for what we're building with this new year.
Yes, I do have it with me. So let's see if I can get it on the camera.
Wow, so beautiful. Oh
Thank
my
you.
God. Yay. Okay.
I can close up on it. And honestly, the actual 3D copy version of this is better than any rendering on a photo or video that I can give you. So
Of course.
um, there are multi-dimensional layers into a lot of the paintings that I do, and most of the time when I paint that through a person's music playlist, through their library, you're getting their wider perspective of their whole expansive unit as a light being. So a lot of the story will come out looking like past memories or past visuals, but a lot of this will have some of it, and a lot of it does with future potentials in a way. So a lot of what I've gotten in your particular painting that you have commissioned here was, again, I have the lotus flower that came out in it, but the roots have gone deep within our 3D realm, our 3D world, right? Our actual earth space. And it does have different colors within that are merged together, that are different spectrums that we see in, not with just our 3D eyes, but our third eye as well, and the idea of ourselves. But you also have this, the Emerald City came up, but it also looks very Atlantis-like. It was different color. Now, a lot of this goes with what we're dealing with new things springing up, the community part that you're talking about that's springing up. We also have the pen, which happened to be a pen that is also a peacock feather that is writing the wave that is the change and split that we see within our community as well. We see this paradigm where people are wanting and striving to understand things, wake up more, right? become that bud that does explode out. You have a lot of throat chakra because you are a strong individual who does speak and speak for a lot of people, actually, a lot in the collective, and do see. So a lot of this actually came out within here, and a lot of the golden webbing that we have, the webbing between light workers are in here. Very kind of bubbly uh, introspection on yourself. But this does help with people, again, your voice, your throat chakra, which helps to open up as well, and your third eye. Uh, it's what's inside that really matters at this point, and that's one of the sayings: is what truly matters doesn't actually matter. It is what's inside. We don't actually see things, we feel things more. I encourage people that when you're actually looking at any one of the paintings I have, is to kind of don't see with your eyes but see what you feel, right? As the energy motions is a lot better. So it's a way, and what I'm creating with this is a way to help. What we're creating is bringing in intuitive art, not expressive art. It's not so confined, whereas people take a lot of art lessons and they will have like whatever the teacher has in front of them. This is designed to, what do you feel? Put it on the canvas. It doesn't matter about the shape at this point, or even the colors. It's just, what do you feel? Because a lot of people are so very disconnected with spirit, with themselves, with other people right now, and they are striving for just the human connection. I've noticed that within interactions with just regular people, and a lot of people are just waking up, just having a human interaction. So this is where you start empowering them and going, okay, it's not they that have the powers, it's us. We are powers that are being, right? So let us be. So this is telling us that we have, this is what's inside of us. It's just waiting to unlock. It's just, what are we doing to unlock it in this, in our communities today? How are we connecting? And every perspective, every color, every shade is valid. It always has been. There is no us versus them. It's, we are them, they are us. So how are we connecting with ourselves and connecting with other people at any level and every level?
Absolutely. Which makes me want to actually say, now that Dawn is working on something, I wanted to actually ask you to talk about the Freedom Directory, Dawn, and where we can see your fabulous eyes and upper head as well, because your nose downward at this point, but who knows what is supposed to be.
Sorry, yeah, I'm just I'm laying on the floor here, so
Oh,
it's because my back is was kind of sore from laying on the bed too much last night, so I'm
there.
just laying on the floor, keeping my back popped up the other way, so it's not gonna hurt. So yeah.
Okay, well,
Um,
fair enough.
but yeah, so my Ontario Freedom Directory. Well, it's been 3 years since I've had it, and it's just a way to bring the community together. I've had different groups in the Ontario Freedom Directory. So if you need a doctor, we have a doctors group. We have a nurses group, a teachers group, a PSW group, a travel group, Airbnb group, house rental group, a lawyers group. Anything you need there, it's in that, within that community. So it's a way to help each other, and if somebody needs a resource, it's in there to look or to find. It has any, like, for example, if you have the teachers group, you can go in there if you need something that has to do with education, and because some of us have been out of school for a long period of time, and some of the kids, they're asking questions, and a lot of parents won't know the answer, right? So it's that way. And at the same time, it provides a job for a teacher. So whenever I come across a job, I can place it in the teachers group or a PSW group or a nurses group, because I got 5 nurses hired up in Barrie at the time. Back then, it's haven't been busy as much as now, but looking for places for people, jobs as well. So it's just a way for everybody to connect within the community. It's on Telegram, but because Facebook at the time was not very helpful, and they've been banning things, and also the police were watching on Facebook, right? Because whenever I did what's called a group shop group, and we'd go to different places as a group. Tim Hortons, for example, wouldn't let us come in because we weren't unvaxxed and not wearing a mask. So I would bring 30 people. We get all piled up outside Tim Hortons and go inside, and but they end up closing their doors on us, and then so we went to the next one and so forth. And even in Oshawa, here at Oshawa Center, we went to the food court. They weren't allowing us to go into the food court because we were not vaxxed, and but we went in there anyway as a group. The security couldn't do anything about it. We got our food, went in there, sat down, and they called the police. But of course, the police didn't really do anything else. They let us finish our meals, and then we left. Right. So it's just stuff like that. Plus providing jobs. Sorry, providing people to those restaurants. So I brought like 120 to a restaurant in Ajax, another 60 in Port Perry, the Blazing Burgers there. He was a great guy, and he brought business to him. He was quite happy and stuff like that. It was just more or less a community coming together and helping one another, right? So, but yeah, it's got a lot of stuff in there. It's taken a long time. It took me 6 months to put it all together, but I'm not as busy in it as much anymore now because I'm trying to do other things, right? So, but that's the whole purpose. Is just anything you need there, like you need a plumber, I have an electrician, I have developers, I got guys who are electricians, I got anybody you need, I have it. So, and I have a lot of connections. I have like 230 groups across Ontario and Canada, and then also I'm in 100 and so groups as well that are not mine. So yeah, but that's basically it. It's pretty simple. I put some on Facebook now but I haven't been doing too much on Facebook. But other than it's another medium to try to reach out to other people too, right? And I did a Christmas party on the weekend there for individuals who didn't have anybody to spend it with, right? So I'm a little groggy because we didn't finish till 2 a.m. in the morning. Everybody, actually, I was surprised. The old fogies stayed until 2 a.m. Usually they're like, okay, I'm gone, I'm leaving, it's 11 o'clock. They're all getting tired, but yeah, they all stayed till late. And but I had cleanup to do at 3 in the morning. And then the next day I got a call to go to a job. So at 12 midnight. So it's been a rough weekend. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so I'm a little groggy, but yeah. And thank you.
Well, thank you. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And by day, your job is actually working with the water,
Yes. So
which is very,
anything,
very key.
yeah, anything you need to know about water, let me know, because I know I've been 24 years in the water main industry, and but I lost my job too, and then I'm now with another company that they treat me pretty good. So yeah,
Well, good on you for making the sacrifices up front in order to be part of the wave that changes what has not been right for a long time, which is really what we're here for. And welcome, JJ. It's great to have you here, and Peter as well. I am excited to introduce you to Rose and Dawn if you are not already aware of each of them. And then Rose was actually sharing a commissioned piece of art that she did, a soul painting for me to describe the sacred sojourn of the soul that I wrote about in my first book, Fully Committed. And if you want to hold that up, Rose, people will be able to see the spectacular beauty of it. And then this is my baby that I had last year. And I'm now working on actually writing this tidal wave. Ironically, I love that it's writing and riding the tidal wave, and the golden web that we're basically creating now, as we call it to mind, and then find it to be what we see it to be first in our mind and then in our lives, because we called it into being through grounding, which is why, Dawn, it's befitting you be on the floor for this one, to literally not have anywhere to fall, but to have already landed, and to say, there's a famous quote that rock bottom was the solid foundation I rebuilt my life on. And I've got to say, I've referenced that many times for myself over the last few years. While I reinvented myself and my identity in that book took 5 years of feeling like a failure before finally then I wrote it in a month. So I just share that because I think we can all relate to the feeling of judgments against ourselves for not being where we were at one point, or where we thought we'd be, or where we felt we should be, or, like in 2019 when I made that crazy call to report the system was corrupt to the policy enforcers that are in place to ensure its survival. I had no idea the Mental Health Act would ever be a threat to someone as sane as I am, I thought. Until then, I found that not to be the truth. And when I went down that rabbit hole, it led towards the foxhole that now we're talking about. And I actually have beside me another book I did not write, but this is The True Cost of Coal. And it's by the Beehive Collective that we're at Bloom Festival in the summer at the Lishman property. And it was amazing to hear them tell the tale of three canvases they created. Rose, they'd be a good connection for you, actually. But it's voluntary work. So it's basically, I think there's 20 something artists that came together and not only put together the story behind each of these three canvases, which are the top down board game type view. You've got the ground level animals who are in it living together through it. And then you've got the true cost of coal canvas, which is talking about the commodification of us, really. And so they told those three stories in detail to the point where the characters that were drawn, such as animals and corn people, were actually reflective of the characters that the people they interviewed when going through the Mesoamericas to see the impact of colonization firsthand, how they described themselves and then wanted to be portrayed and depicted. And then that's what was used to decide how they would be portrayed. So I just over the weekend on Christmas Eve got the replay of the video where it was presented. So I have that now. I just need to get permissions to be able to share it because I don't want to take away from anything that they're doing, but certainly want to say I bought two copies of the book because I've got little nephews and a niece, and so does Jordy. So I got each of us one for our families because the coal fueled the wars and consumption and greed. The climate was changing to chaos with speed. I can read this another time because that's not what we said we'd do, but it's really significant that every single piece of this canvas, which is all of it part of the bigger canvas, all of them were drawn and then depicted in a story that we got to watch. It was absolutely amazing. So, definitely something for artists to consider. But the story itself is very reflective of the real story of Rome that I believe it's time for us to tell, which is what I've been working on over the last year. So I published the Justinian Connection report in March on my website for free with little response. And then over the summer, I put together the reality of the real I'm hesitating or pausing because I can't remember what I specifically called it before I didn't publish it, ironically enough. But it was the reality of my empowerment or the reality of man's empowerment, which is the acronym for Rome that we have as Robert comes into the experience today, which is very befitting. So it's great to have you here, Robert, and that story. Now that I have the video footage of um, Saku delivering it actually to us. I'm just going to mute your camera there or your video there, Robert, so that the feedback doesn't kick back for us. But if you want to say anything, you just need to unmute yourself and you'll be able to then. But yes, so those videos I got on Christmas Eve from the Slinky people, Candace and Jacob, who I met at Bloom Festival as well, who had a Slinky tent and it's play therapy. But she actually knows a tremendous amount about the theater of oppression, which I'd not really heard about or was so well versed in. But it's literally the theatrics behind the story of Rome that I've been piecing together the entire time. And she's just like, oh, thespians know about all of this. It's like, oh, well, not a thespian, so didn't know about this and had to do the research myself. So if I'd have known, I could have come to your community and found out the information that took me months to do. But anyway, the point is that this report that I am going to be unleashing in January reflects what I pieced together before now. I met the Honeybee Collective and also Candace and the Slinky Fun Experience and Rose as well. We had met earlier in the year while I was still piecing it together. And part of the reason the second piece to it as the title and the subtitle was Ode to Laurelese, because Laurelese is the language of empowerment that people can lease as a play on legalese, which is the alternative that is not in our favor, obviously. And so Laurelese is the language of energy that we can actually better understand our energetic makeup. That is the whole I stick way to approach being ourselves fully. So that's what I've been working on over the holidays, of kind of creating a course that's going to be launching in January that pieces the story together, but also brings forward the characters that have other stories that relate to, because I'm not the only storyteller here. So this is really our invitation to create a story together. So I'm grateful that each of you came today and have used your name to be able to say, this is where I'm at. This is my spot on the map. Because this is the thing we have to start really gamifying in a way I don't know how to do, but I know that we do together, of figuring out how to gamify the sacred sojourn of the soul. And Rena Malka comes in now, who's been having the Freedom Lovers Canada calls since the beginning of all of this. So welcome, Rena. It's great to have you here. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you for inviting me, Laura.
Yeah, absolutely. So Rena's got another call, the third in the series about the POG primer, coming up on January 2nd. I believe you're back
Yes.
behind the gallery dashboard manning things while we have a deeper conversation about how to make the efforts that we've all been working towards practical. And so that's what the POG primer is about in terms of the public-private partnerships. And the component I am wanting to bring to the table is how there's a counterfeit version of all things, which is anything that can be incorporated into a corporate body, which is the equivalent to a collective consciousness that connects to the frequency nets as well of our consciousness. So I know Rose knows a tremendous amount more about that than what I can go into specifically. But what I do know is that our self-image is reflective of the glass ceiling, the invisible glass ceiling that we hit when we outperform our self-image. Was the POG was the in-person POG meeting in Huntsville last week recorded in a video? I am not sure, and I didn't know about the Huntsville meeting specifically, but we will be meeting at 1 o'clock today, actually, if anyone is interested, and that's where we're able to actually come together. Sheila was going to come, so I don't know where she is this morning specifically, but I'm sure she's getting ready for the 1 o'clock call. And no, it's not my talk specifically, Robert, and I definitely don't want these calls to feel that way either. So I appreciate that feedback, and I know that it's easy to kind of just get into the sharing of information kind of mode. But I do really want this to be the setting where we set the stage to be able to play together in a way that we can all put our best foot forward. So I'd
Yeah,
love, with all of that said, for someone else to say something.
I was going to mention Sheila's Sheila's at Druthers' house right now. She shot me a text this morning, so
Got it.
she's staying over there right now. So
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, Dawn and I got together with Erin as well, who was on Rena's call the first week and second week. And so it was fantastic because I'd had Dawn's card in my space for months, literally, where we met at the Canada Day celebration at the Druthers' house. And I had his number in my space and I just hadn't followed up with him, but I knew he was significant. I just didn't know how or when. And I feel like now is the time. This is when we're all coming together because this is when it's meant to happen. So the public-private partnerships perspective is key to understand from a first, second, and third person pronoun perspective, which then brings in the pronouns and how those have been used as part of the agenda as well. So with this today, in terms of what's being unboxed, is the opportunity for us to come together in community to share the tales that go deeper. Rose had shared the painting that she did for the Sacred Sojourn of the Soul that is reflective of this movement that we're all kind of moving forward in our own ways using. And the wave is the ways that we right what wrongs we notice by notice, and we start seeing the capitalized versions of all things being the incorporated things. Yes, this Rose did over the last week as a commissioned art piece for me, and she did it using a playlist that I sent her of about 10 to 12 songs, and then she actually paints the sounds that she sees and hears. So that process is intuitively guided, and coming together to do intuitive art classes is something that we're also going to be offering the community. Don was talking about all of the community connections he has. Rena has a huge network as well and has been doing her best to bring together the people that have solutions to find solutions. And she's in the tropical, beautiful space of Florida. So it's amazing to have you here. How's it over there, Rena?
Well, actually, it's been very overcast and a little cool the last week and some rain. So it hasn't been the best weather, but it's supposed to be nice next week.
Oh,
You never
beautiful.
know. In Florida, it's iffy, in the winter season.
Right.
But it's still better than snow.
Yeah. We don't have any snow here. It is a green Christmas, which is
So I hear
exciting.
warm for this time of year.
Yeah. Oh, fabulous. So Don just shared the link for the Telegram group that he has the Ontario Freedom Directory with. So we can grab that. Rena, if you want to share, is your call number always the same or does it change each week? I wasn't sure.
It's a different Zoom link every week.
Okay.
And if you'd like to get the Zoom link, we send out a newsletter every week, which contains the upcoming meeting and new Zoom link, and plus the recordings of all previous meetings. So you can join Freedom Lovers Canada by going to the website, freedomloverscanada.com, and it's free to join. And there's a lot of other resources on the website too. So we hope to see you next week on January 2nd. And thank you very much for informing everybody, Laura, about it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for all that you've done to host them weekly. That your consistency is very impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm just going to be listening here. So I'm interested to learn what you have to say this in this meeting. And thanks again for inviting me.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, so in terms of today's meeting, because it's an unboxing day special, it's really playing on the words, but it's also unboxing the gift that we are as the bouquet of gems that each of us represent. So I'm going to toss the ball over to Rose and ask you to share what is coming up with everything that's been shared so far, because when you mentioned the records or the library at the beginning, people may have thought you were referring to a physical space, and you're not. So elaborate on that, start there, and then see where we go from here.
Okay, so a lot of what I do when I channel, some people call the Akashic Library, but it's more along the lines of something multiversal, to each person unique. Each person is their own library, their soul. And one of the endeavors I have, one of the projects I have going on is called Symphony of Souls, and it is huge drop canvases. And we have soul paintings. Again, the less I know of a person, the better, because it comes out in their painting through their music, through the frequency that each signature we have, each soul signature we have, and how it changes throughout each interaction, our linear lives, our multiversal lives. But this library opens up once I interact with a person. It usually takes a few seconds. And then you have your whole soul library of each experience, whether it be traumatic or untraumatic, or just memories or emotions, which are energy motions that go out. Now, the Symphony of Souls is something that I'm working on that includes everybody in the community. Anybody's allowed to, again, be a part of it. And I have I have 7 of them canvas drop sheets that are 9 by 12 feet, and they represent the human body, collective souls, and how each of us are actually very much common thread strung together. We do come from all the same Big Bang point. We all come from the same source inside. We're different reflections and perspectives of that being expressed in this space. So connecting it together, we see the common threads between us. Instead of dividing each other, we see where we are commonalities, and where we can respect each other and appreciate each perspective as we've traveled through life, through any of our experiences, and how it reflects into other people's spaces. That's a connection point to be built. So that is what I mean when I library, because it's a grand library that we're all in. We're in a huge story. So we're in this history, her story, our story of this entire place that is unfolding, right? There's things that are unfolding now that has already been written through history, and it's happening now, and it hasn't happened yet. So we are experiencing it now. We are making it now. We are creating it now. That's what I mean by library and libraries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the golden webs as well that you painted are reflective of what the New Age movement refers to as the Antikarana. But that's just the incorporation of a concept into that ideology, theology, mystery school, whatever you want to refer to the New Age movement as. I want to be clear, when Rose is speaking and when I am speaking, of which I can only speak for myself, but I also refer to her because I have had the privilege of getting to know her more over the last months that we've been connected, and I've seen her value and everything that she goes through in order to be able to bring forward these masterpieces, as we all do, with being somewhere on a spectrum, which is the color spectrum of hues within the whole of us. That is ultimately what we came back here to reclaim. But if we deny anything, it will have to come back to us through what is outside of us if we won't deal with it, to feel it and then heal it from the inside. So I put that forward from just touching on the New Age construct and say that is not what we are talking about in the references that are being used, because our BS belief systems don't actually come from an existing book, because it comes from the lived experience that took us through these journeys to be able to say, Yeah, no. I can take this, this, and this from the buffet of availabilities, but I don't want that, and that. I feel like it would taint my whole buffet experience. So I'm just going to leave them and I'm going to take what works for me. So that's what we have done specifically with the way that we've put together the grimoire, which is the label that would be put onto a spell book or a witch's book that contains all of the spells and recipes that she's found or he has found worked for them. It is to say that when I talk about any of this, I want you to be very attention or pay attention to the resistance that comes into you when you hear some of these trigger concepts that say, oh, now she's on that. Like, I can't, I'm done. Like, I've had people praying when I've been leading things. I was told of afterwards by someone who loved me enough to say, just so you're aware, this was happening because people don't know what you're playing with. People don't know the energy that you're bringing forward. You're challenging the Bible, which I say is buy is an act of mercantile, and then bull are reflective of the bullas, which are seals that are put onto official religious documents. And then we buy the bulla because we bite the bull when we actually become the ones carrying weapons in arms in wars that make us pawns to fight another man's war, because we bite the bullet because we're fighting with arms that occupy our hands because we're occupying lands for another man's war. And it's insane. But to break it down in this way just sounds like what to you is the question. Because when you start to reflect on what's being said, and instead of taking notes like we learned in school of what the one is saying, and instead we take notes of what we're feeling or thinking about what is being said as it is, it works out better for us, because then we see that a grimoire is just a combination of that which we feel might work for us, that becomes like a codex. And then we start to see that historically, the Justinian Codex was the foundation of the legal fiction upon which the insanity is based. And Justinian's Codex was because Justinian was in charge of the Roman Empire at the time that was a republic, and republic comes from res publica, which is the public thing or public affair. And when we see it there, we say, okay, wait a minute, whether it's a republic or whether it's an empire, ultimately, we can't be inspired without the middleman if we are going to hold our first person pronoun position in our own story as the main character instead of a supporting role. So we can support others without losing the position in our own story. And then we can also take what works for others, like what Justinian did by taking all of the legislation that was available during his time and then put it all under one book, which is under one house, his. So he put his name on it and called it the Justinian Codex. And then we've continued using it because it's what Western philosophy is based on. And if you tell me that science is not the best philosophy that's been proven until a better hypothesis comes along to disprove that which was believed in before for the sake of this new concept, then I would really love to know what the distinction between a belief system and a fact is, because I don't believe there is any, except for the value that we place on one or the other and say is not just our opinion. So that's my BS, belief systems. I'm throwing it back. Rose?
Okay, so touching on, like you were saying, again, we're basically seeing the fall of Rome. Rome itself, it's part of what is a global conglomerate system that we see within the religious system, it's within the government systems and the medical systems that we see as itself. But as we're seeing it fall in a way, because it's crumbling, because we are taking back our power, we are the ones powering it, giving our power away. So as we take back and we shift that paradigm to bring in more of a heaven space, a bliss vibe, a higher vibration than the one that they do to keep us in a fear mode, a debt bill in a way when we collect and trade between ourselves. We don't have the energy exchange, then we don't have the actual exchanging of things. We become more greed into it. So that system in itself is starting to, and I say collapse, but more or less it's actually being refined. It's being refined by us to have an energetic exchange instead of just a materialistic exchange. So all of those connections that we're seeing, even the, again, as we were talking about the history of it, it's literally a script that is being played out now. So as Rome is a reflection of collapse, we've heard about thousands of years ago, it's actually happening now. So it ripples back. Time itself isn't what people perceive it to be. Everything happens now, everything is playing out now, and it's rippling back into our spaces so that we're able to actually experience and change and shift where we're going. So we're not back into this system that actually keeps us subjugated, keeps us in this our own mind prisons in a way. This is where we start to, as we unbox it, there is no box, there is no spoon. That's what exists, is what we make of it. And life, people ask what's the meaning of that. Again, it's what meaning do you assign to it? So this way it gives you back the power into your own hands of who you want to be and where you want to go in this, but also how we connect together, and actually start to see that we're not so separate anymore the way they have kept us, especially since 2020. Obviously we've seen that it was a whole separation thing because more people started to open up, and especially their heart space. Home is where the heart is, right? Home is where the heart is. So as we gain that balance back, it's some of the things that we're butting heads against, right? People that are holding on to that mentality that which enslaves them, unless you don't know that. They don't know that they're being enslaved. So the expressiveness that each one of us can have, especially with each skill that we've had and we've gone through and experienced in our lifetime, lifelines, we get to reconnect and have those skills be portrayed out of us. So again, and what you've put into a collective book again, and even the connections itself will help people to understand where we are on this timeline.
Yeah, and then the Symphony of Souls is actually where people can have their own square on the canvas, literally. So if that's something of interest that you might want to get in on, you can reach out to Rose. So if you want to put your details in the comments there, Rose, I'll make sure that those go out with the recording that I'm going to post of this conversation, because it is very significant that each of us are doing our own thing. We're all contributing in our own way to the best of our abilities with the belief systems that we have. And we've been doing the best that we can with that. And it's all been limited because we've all been limited, and we've been separated in order to forget the web of interconnectedness that makes us think, when we're acting in a professional capacity, that we're separate from the people that we live amidst, which is not true. And when the corporate ladder falls, because that is the fictitious nature of what Rome is based off of generally, when that corporate ladder structure falls and corporate realities no longer have any meaning at all because there's no fiat currency in effect any longer, we'll have a lot of identities fall with the fiats in the process. And a fiat is a spoken oration that is given validity by the nation that orates it, which is the de facto one. De facto is part of de factory. And when we start to see that the de facto government is the equivalent to the factory that we have all been cogs in through our cognition, that's when we start to see that our vocation is driven by our volition. And that's just using some words that sounded like they needed to go together in my head, but it is also to say there is a big difference between a vocation, career, and job. Jobs will be stripped away. Careers took a lot of climbing in order to secure until that is taken away from you through the challenging of a license to lie to your senses, for instance, like the medical professionals and legal professionals have been having to walk the line in order to not lose that which they paid a lot to accrue. And we really need to be able to see that we're still the people that live with the people, that we're screwing in order to get profits in a fiat currency that will mean nothing when the fiats are no longer valid or given validity by us who uphold them, such as mandates that tell me what man I can date. When I say, wait, I get to choose for myself, thank you very much. And I believe if anyone tries to tell me what man I can date, which just plays with the construct of a mandate, any man or woman telling me who I can or cannot date is causing me harm if I say I choose for myself and they try to compete. So if that were to be the case, I want to actually make this practical, because a lot of people have started to believe that the common law notices don't work. But that's only because they're referencing a specified common law, not the unwritten one that we can draw from as artists and creators with unlimited capacity until we cap ourselves with the consciousness that says, well, we can't go any higher than that because that's where the professionals take over. Well, the professional is a third person and is actually a degree of marksman. So when we see the degree of the marksman determines which X is going to be hexed or vexed, then we start to see that the professionals are what the corpse needs in order to orate its rules and desires on behalf of that which the one orating the rules sires for him or herself in his or her own life. Because we are meant to be the conscience of a corpse that is heartless and soulless, until we become the soul for the soul corporation, which is the counterfeit version of the SOUL. The soul corporation is the SOLE. So when we see the counterfeiting of all things, we start to see that a specified land version of common law is to say, well, this is my land that I commonly walk on with all other men and women. And then the other man or woman would have to say they're not part of that group in order to say that my common law doesn't apply. Well, that's a fallacy, and why we have a de facto government playing on de facto government, just to say that a de jure government is the government of the day. Well, who rules by night then? Because Eve was the counterpart to Adam, which only was introduced when Democritus revealed his discovery of atomism on his deathbed, when the Spanish Inquisition couldn't force him to recant because he was already dying. So he stood his stance and went out peacefully, but said, hey, you guys got to look at atomism, because that says that vitalism and materialism can mix two unequal things and make them one. The first no longer being an original, and the second being something new, which is then convertible, that is ownable, because the creator owns the creation, which means the one that claimed the land with a capitalized L that says it applies to all lands, that is uncapitalized because it implies and applies to all lands, will imply those two things to be the same when that is not true, for the uncapitalized one refers to it literally, compared to the the specified version of land, it refers to only an aspect of that, or the hue of the thing, which is where humanism is, where we bring the trans movement forward. For the hues of man are not the same as mankind when kindness is left in the frame. And when the men and women acting on behalf of the corpse don't bring their conscience with them to work, that's when they accrue karma that is going to call for a day of reckoning before the end of life as we know it. For it will come when our bank accounts that we're full of fiat currencies get counted, and we have to account for how we got the money that we did. If we have to call to an exchequer that moves us into the third person debtor position. So this is a whole lot, but this is the rabbit holes that I've went on to say that Adam and Eve, the fundamental story that we have come to believe to be about two trees in a garden, that one was the tree of knowledge and the other the tree of life, but the two were not distinguished. So when Eve of the night came up to bite the apple from the tree of knowledge, she didn't know whether it was knowledge or life that she was eating from. Rose, you can go deeper into this prose.
Okay, so a lot of the story of Adam and Eve is also about which knowledge we have, and also again as you're talking about duality. At one point we were in unity, that would be unity consciousness, heart consciousness, the Garden of Eden, Nirvana, Shambhala, whichever you want to call it at this point. And when we split to have a different perspective, again, the yin yang, the yin and, some people say yin and yang because they're not in fact in a unity place. But again, the yin side being the intuitive side, that which we as feminines, or if you're in feminine energy, you don't have to be in a feminine body, you're able to intuitive see what would be in the dark, which would be what is source, the drop of light in within the dark, and you bring it into the light. And normally in a masculine role, you build it into 3D. And people who are in unity are unified full spectrum color. They're able to again actually do all of that themselves, right? To be able to build into 3D, but also be intuitive enough to carry that over from what they're seeing in an astral space. The Eve part on there, again, she had taken the knowledge, right? The gnosis, the activation, which would be still unity in a way to bring forth something else, new knowledge, right? Our knowledge of our awareness in a way, because it became a mirror that we see between each other. So the act of Adam and Adam splitting, the Eve, which would be a new dawn, which is a new world in a way, which is what we are bringing birth to, is actually us, again, looking at the fact that we are all the same perspective, but we're, again, the same perspective to say we're reflections of different perspectives, but we're actually here to see that we are in from a same unity place. We're actually going through a unity consciousness awakening right now, and that is some of where the separation has been coming in through play, through things that have been acted in the last few years, and that's where we start to again bring ourselves together. The story of Adam and Eve is very metaphorical, allegorical, and you can take it literal and in a sense as well. A tree of life, a tree of knowledge, a thing that we're growing, right? The roots that are even here that I go back, that are actually very much covering and part of the world that we're creating, and they run deep. And a lot of the healing that we go through, again, when you go to the root of the problem, is easy for us to actually start this healing process to open the heart. I believe the 1,000-petal lotus type thing. So again, you're opening all of this up, the bud to open, the seed to open, so that we are able to again birth something new into this world. So, and a lot of the history, I've gone through some of it. I have a podcast as well that went through a lot of how you're looking at science, religion, mythology, and actually it's the same story being repeated over and over again, just a different way of seeing it, different filter, different color. And basically it's like a telephone game. So you can actually go back and see all the common threads in it, even right down to our reality space being, we have a celestial system above us that we see, and so above, so below, so within, so without. You can actually see the commonalities between that as well. Our 3D space, what occurs in celestial space, what we create in astral space, and how we bring it here, and it goes out everywhere. So
I absolutely love that. And I wanted to actually bring the concept of oneness to a different level than what I've really heard it explained, but it makes so much sense. And it's not because I'm saying it that I think that. It's just like we have all been getting divided by what we call the all. What if we just called it all? And instead of trying to say man and woman and trying to fit us all into constructs that are smaller than what we are, why not instead actually just make it so that us is under all? And so then we go into the government and then the municipal cops, courts, councils, and then we get into the corporations that ultimately they're all under anyway, because then underneath of that box is our little person. And it's subject to all of the rules of all of this that stop here, because the all-seeing eye at the top of the pyramid is simply the part that is not capitalizable, because you can't capitalize what is unlimited, which are creators that create with the energy of all that we all have access to until we are perceived to be limited and then drop into the public, which is what this part down here is. The up top is the private, which is why the military has an inverted reality where the privates are the lowest denomination or value of currency within that whole system. Because if a private believes themselves to be powerful, they might actually remember the value of maintaining our privacy as ones who can remain private in our own lives. But the reason that I find it so powerful is because the semantics of meanings applied to words, which is syntax, and then how those meanings applied to words and sentence structures then fit together to create combined meanings. And basically, this upper top part was the part that we're all fighting about because it's not been limited. So how do you define a woman? Well, how the fuck do I know? Pardon my language. But at the same time, it's that whole fornicating under carnal knowledge construct that we start to say, wait a minute, this whole cursing piece means that we're just saying the shit end of the stick that's meant to ship high in transit, except for we forgot that too. And so then we just say, oh, screw it, let the professionals deal with it, and I'll just be a ward of all of this, which is the public that's limited, because anytime there's the capitals, we're drawn into here, compared to when we stay in our private capacity as the all that created us, that created things. That's very different from being the thing that the all created, and then man named certain things to be part of his plan. And then he got to be the family tree that we plucked the apple from, that didn't fall far from it, they say. Because give a child until he's 7 to know who the man will be, is what the Jesuit said, which I remind thee is je suis. When we actually see the spell in je suis, without the I being the character that was made to be a main subject to the personages, titles, and stories he couldn't contest because he wasn't alive when the book was written about the way he lived his life. Like, what could happen to us if we're not able to trust others to tell our story for us? This is how we stay in the private, where we have relationships with people because we didn't walk all over them in the public trying to climb a ladder that goes nowhere in the end, when we have no friends or family or loved ones, because we sacrificed all of what's real for what isn't, because it paid better. Helen, did you have something you wanted to say?
I just am overwhelmed with how well can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
You are low. Your volume is low, but we can hear you. Yes.
I'm just overwhelmed that synchronicity. I happened to call somebody because he called me last night, and then he was listening to women in the background. So I said, "Oh, you're listening to wise women in the background," and I'm so happy that I'm part of your group.
Yay! Well, we're thrilled to have you here.
Thank you. There's been lots of questions in regard to the Bible and Adam and Eve and dogmatic men quite often. And I studied myself under ancient wisdom for 6 years. And what I learned there was that we all have a masculinity and a femininity within us, and both should develop so that we can use it when needed.
Yeah. Having the balance. And actually, yesterday, Helen, I saw a video that feels very relevant. And Rose, you'd mentioned as well about you didn't use the term wounded masculine and feminine, but that was the construct of the video that I was watching that really made a lot of sense, because we're talking about like the domination of which dominate is actually connected to Roman days, the word itself. I found that in my studies, and Rose evidently knows more, and I'm sure when we get Candace on, she's going to be able to say it too. But the concept of wounded feminine and masculine being the side of the archetypes that we're playing in the mud of, compared to when we've actually got the healed and functional version of those same things. We don't need to focus so much on one or the other. It's about coming into balance within both.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming. It's great to have you here. And your name is very significant, given Helen of Troy is such a pivotal character to all of this, which I'm going to throw over to Rose to speak more into.
There we go. Talking about the again, the wounded masculine, feminine, a lot of, again, Helen of Troy, where she was a feminine that was within her power, and a lot of masculines find that very attractive, and which they would go to war over. So again, yes, it's very synonymous, but again, I'd like to go back again even to the whole concept of Adam and Eve, because Eve was considered to be somebody to blame for taking the apple, but in a way, and was said again, the snake was Lucifer. But if we look at the snake and we look at Lucifer as being the light, literally coming into fruition, awareness, right? But also the Kundalini snake that each one of us has, is when both intertwine to become one. So again, one snake, one awareness, and you're literally popping awake to become aware of the delusions that we are in. So that would be reclaiming your power as a sovereign being, as your own creator in your own reality. So as she had the apple to say here, or some a pomegranate, some say a fig, but again, it was just literally a fruit, that which is coming to fruition, a birth, right? Here it is. Do you see it? Is that evil to just point it out? I mean, yes, it wakes us up from the construct to go, wait a second, it is a huge shock, right? To wake up into this reality space and go, wait a second, we've been lied to. What's been put on top of us. But is she evil for doing that, for waking somebody up to the truth? I mean, you could try to go back to sleep, but that would be waking up again outside of the matrixing system that we are in. So as we said, Helen of Troy, a lot of these feminines, a lot of the oracles, a lot of the oracles of Delphi, a lot of the women have been, in a way, in a 3D paradigm, been very much either in control, dominated, right? Dominate, meaning dominate of that. They've been dominated in a way, subjugated in a way, so that there's no equality, right? There's no, again, back to this unity consciousness where it is one snake, right? It is the healing part. The twin snakes are also represented in our medical system. We see it as I keep forgetting the name of it, but you see the twin snakes within the medical system itself, which is actually indicative of Hermes. Goes back to Thoth, the Emerald tablets. You can go back through all of that. It's actually the same entity, but it's talking about gnosis, basically. It's just talking about knowing. So being aware of your reality, and being the creator of your reality. So unlocking that and understanding you're the creator of your reality and everything that you've gone through in your linear lifetime and even your soul lifetime, because it echoes out, we're responsible for that. So to put that blame onto somebody else, we're literally going, wait a second, we're not in control, as opposed to saying, wait a second, we are in control. And some people go through this dark night of the soul, or they go through this introspection that is very emotional. But you're not alone. Each one of us goes through it in our own way to understand and unlock ourselves so that we're able to be the most effective in our own 3D space. The more that we do ourselves individually, our purposes, and our purpose is defined by our interactions in any and every experience we go through, not just defined and boxed and limited, but therefore you're just in a different color spectrum. You're in humanity, right? But as we go through and find our purpose, we know our purpose, then we go on that path. And the more that we show, instead of the tell part, the more that we actually live it, embody it, the more that it changes the paradigm for everyone else around us, but it helps us to connect together. You start attracting and resonating and getting that tribe, the people come towards you more. So again, Helen of Troy had that, she was a desire to be grabbed at, right? To be gone to war over, warring in a 3D space, warring with ourselves in a way. And I have to say, the name on here, I have Rose War. I had used a name, I've used War of Roses as a pseudonym for mine, often within some public forums in 2020. And that is literally just warring with ourselves, but also the war of the Tudors, right? That were fighting over who had legitimate heir to a throne, and both the same family, and didn't care who got in the middle, which was literally and is literally what we're seeing right now. We're watching people go to war over one aspect of things, and they don't care who's caught in the middle of it. We're watching it in our reality system. So instead of giving either side a power, we just take it back for ourselves and go, no, we're not playing that anymore. That's a game that we are not going to be a part of.
Mm-hmm. So why the fruit? Why was it a fruit that was handed to Eve?
Well, again, you go to the fruit. We talk about the pineal gland being opened, right? So the pine cone, which is also a fruit in a way, it's a seed, right? So a fruit is what, again, what comes into fruition, right? The fruit that was given to her was literally the gnosis of waking up, the fruit of what comes in, right? To eat from the tree of knowledge, to understand what has been created, but also understanding and understanding that it's coming from a different space. We come through source. We come closer to source in that way, right? We come closer to God in that way. God's source, the original construct, the original drop, the actual seed that was here. And it's funny because something that I've written on my board that I don't quite show often shows that, again, there was the womb. The seed was actually part of the light that was dropped in, the light being that of the masculine. Now you have darkness and light. The seed that came from that made the flower of life, which bears fruit, is the masculine and feminine together, but also within the construct of this matrix and constructs of source, which actually births a fruit, right? It births a universe, our whole perspective here. So you're talking again about what makes a fruit, what fertilizes that. That's both sides. That is both masculine and feminine energies together. That is unity consciousness. And it's funny you said us, unity system. So that's where we're at. And to get to the top of a pyramid, a capstone, which there is no ceiling for, literally means that we are not, again, we're at a capstone. We are seeing something as all perspectives, and we can dive into each one. You can go through the whole yin yang, which is a sphere, and see it as a yin yang, or you can see it as a yin and a yang, which then splits you. So you look at it as a sphere, as an apple, right? The entirety of this fruit system that we're in, that keeps going. It's a bubble that just keeps going and expanding. There's no stopping that growth.
Toroidal field, right?
Yes.
Which is kind of like the center point of a donut. So we are the center point of the donut, which is the toroidal field. So it's like we're where the seeds of the apple trees actually come from.
Yes, I wrote something similar to that. So again, as the rays of light, raws of light, go back to mythology, again, the capstones, the pyramids themselves, which are generators. As those rays of light, the tears of the sun, or blood of the sun, S-O-N, again, you see where it parallels into our religious systems, our belief systems that we go through. They actually drop down as you are clear, just drops down through you. If you're a clear vessel, a Christ conscious vessel, right? Crystal clear, as a prism is. And so as it drops through, and we see that whole triangle prism, which again is the capstone, but as it's clear, it breaks the spectrum up and it can actually bring it back into unity as the light goes through it, right? As we are light beings. And as we go through this toroidal field, if you look at the waters as being time, waters as being energy, motions, emotions, goes out, it hits the end of where sometimes our expansive energy is, of our awareness, even though we can keep going, and it ripples back in. So anything that you put out as emotion in your linear timeline in your life is actually out there captured, especially in an Akashic Records, the library that we were talking about earlier, is ripples back in. And we see it as history, but it's actually something that is being created now. And the way it ripples back, it takes time. And sometimes it doesn't come back in its entirety, because what happens is we have rocks inside of our field, right? You have asteroids that are flying around in your energy field, your light field. And so what happens is sometimes, as a telephone game, what you send out doesn't always come back in its entirety, but it does have a common thread. It is a telephone game. It is connected in every mythology, religion. It's connected through science, through math, through all of it. It's biology. It's everything in there. So speaking in a metaphor, speaking in anything that you're watching even today, if you watch programs, you can unprogram the program so you're not programmed, but watch it for what it is to get the information out of it, to see that it is commonality, common threads that you can use to connect to people. The common threads of tapestry. Yes.
Yes. Common threads in the tapestry, you said.
Yes, tapestry of life, which is again the common threads. And some of us have master key to get it out, right? To unlock, help people unlock themselves on that commonality.
Yes. And the Monarch Slave Program is a trauma-based program that has been used to keep the monarchs at the top of the prism that is the prison system. Because when I was locked up, I could only see 3 of the characters of the chess game, and I couldn't figure out why, given I know how to play chess. And the 3 that I could see were the hidden hands, or I couldn't see the hidden hands. They were the front-facing characters of the prism, of this prison experience, I've been told. And interestingly, this is actually gang symbol for 666, which I didn't know, except for I've started to do it more, because it's just like the prism, like 3 characters. The king, pawn, and knight were the ones that I could see, but I couldn't see the queen, castle, or rook, and the bishop, which is the diagonal sideways character, befittingly enough. And I couldn't figure it out until I started asking the questions that I can't find in print here specifically. But the more that I start to understand, it's just like, oh yeah, right. We're not going to see the capstone of the capitalizing of us within the prism system of the monarch slave trauma-based system that uses keywords to trigger us into programs that then become the same program that keeps us in a loop, not seeing that a spiral takes us to a same point. It's just from a higher perspective, when we're actually willing to see that every new devil has new levels with higher rent, new neighbors, and better views. If we're willing to actually use the fuse of our energies in motion to integrate them into a system through acceptance, alignment, and attunement as the 3 A's for how we can play the game like the hidden hands that I couldn't see, and then ask the questions that helped me get the answers.
So on introspection on that, because I did get a message yesterday, downloaded in last night as well. The spiral that we're seeing spiral up, and the ones that you can see, the ones that you are not able to see because it is quantumly, it's a quantum chessboard, it's a multiversal chessboard, they move in the opposite inside out inverse way. So it is a mirrored form. It is the antimatter to matter. And so why we are not able to perceive it is because most of us are locked into the 3D programming of what we see, instead of closing our eyes because they deceive us, and opening the third eye, which would be the one that's inside, so that you're able to see the other side of said board. It's a butterfly effect 5-dimensional chess game, whereas somebody in their space, whether it be Peter, JJ, or you, and you make a move on your space, whatever it is that is causing an emotional ripple to go out within a collective, it will affect a pawn or a bishop or something else on somebody else's board in their space. So the more that we communicate with each other, we understand that each one of our moves is actually moving along in a collective board. We can actually make better moves for us and then for the collective, and then we understand where each one of us are reflecting and refracting off of each other. So that prism that we see as a capstone. And again, going back to War of Roses and such, the power, the monarchy system was enacted by the Pope, who took the thorns from the crown of thorns and actually gave those thorns out to royal families and designated them as being rulers, but they were not legitimate. So the wars that have happened were to see who was legitimate, being able to wear that crown of thorn, the capstone of what we sacrificed to get there, as you've gone back through the beginning saying we've sacrificed in the 3D space to be at the top of this capstone, the sacrifice to have a bloody crown in a way, to have the blood to go through, right? The tears of blood, the tears of the sun. So as we're going through all of this, we understand that like I said, where we're at, once you merge the inverse and what you see and you don't see, that's a Merkaba. One spins one spins the other. It's also masculine and feminine. Once you do that, you become a sovereign being, become your own creator in your own space, instead of allowing just for what you see at the top and not understanding the moves at the bottom. You can play each side in every board then.
Yeah, and you brought the concept of 5D chess within a multiverse to my awareness when I was asking the question, why could I only see those three? Because what I found out afterwards is that the knight is actually called the cavalier in French, which is why I believe they sent the cavalry to Ottawa when they needed to show the next level of player to the pawns that are the regular soldiers, or the ones sent out front to keep the peace or the false front of it. And then the king, he doesn't get sent to battle because he's far too valuable. So he stays at the back to watch because he wants entertainment of the blood that's shed in his name to make him feel more powerful. But the queen is actually reine in French, which I asked the question because it dawned on me that king is roi, ROI, which is return on investment within the corporate realm. So then I said, well, wait a minute, what's queen? And then I got reine. And that is connected to souveraine, under right rule, or queen, because she's the hidden hand we haven't seen playing the king, because that's what dogma does when church and state are in bed together, but they're only diddling behind the curtain when they think that no one's watching.
It's also a play again. You have raw, which is ROI, raw, as we said, right? What is in the light? And the hidden, which would be the queen on the board. When you're playing, again, when you're back into your own sovereignty as a being that's a light being that takes your energy back, you're then able to be every and any piece on the board. So this way you can, in a way, the queen can be a pawn and you would have no clue because she's playing a different board as a pawn, in which case she's still a queen. So it is what we're playing underneath. And the rain, like you said, what's behind the scenes right now, a lot of what has been driven, going back to Helen of Troy, what drives our reality space, a lot of women actually have been in a under control, but more in control as that which kind of guides our reality. So a lot of people, a lot through history, you can actually go through, and it's the queen that actually helps with the king, right? The council that is behind the scenes, behind the curtain, or don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain, right?
Yeah. What they always say, behind every good man is a woman that's helping him from behind the scenes so he looks great, and she's just covering all the bases he can't do while he's playing on the big leagues,
Yeah.
at the big leagues. So I feel like we've been playing at the big leagues today, and I'm grateful to everyone for showing up today and contributing in the way that each of you have. Rose, particularly, thank you for sharing all the insights that you have that are so mythologically based, and you're so well versed that I don't think I couldn't find a book that would go on the journey that we have, and conversations that help me kind of see how things come together, which actually my inspiration when I was trying to find the name for the report, and Laura Lee's was part of it. Rose had actually been a piece in helping me solidify that for myself. And there's more to it I won't share, but I will say that the crown of thorns is actually part of what inspired me to say it's the crown of laurels upon which, or from which, my name is based. That is how we actually wear the crown of laurels into town, to be the victors that don't need the title, because instead we're just victorious, and that's good enough, instead of saying which one of us did what, which we'll all have to account for sooner or later. And I say, I reckon we do it now, so that whatever has been done is done, but we don't pay with our lives and our souls for the fact that we didn't make it out more whole, because we didn't do what we came here to do, which is come together, not just for the droll, which is the play on the clown, the droll, the funny, the French. But it is to say that there's a mixing of jurisdictions within all of the linguists and with all of the mystery schools. And syncretism is actually part of it, which I hadn't heard of until I went on more rabbit holes that took me back to my one of my English classes in university, actually, where then I started finding all of these words, including ideological state apparatus, ISAs, as they're called, upon which repressive state apparatuses are also premised, which is the reinforcement wing or branch of what have become constructs of a corporate nature that incorporate us into the fictitious nature to empower the machine at the expense of those who have been getting used, which is why the fruit is what was given within a fructus system. A fructus is the middle ability to use, which is usus, someone else's things, before abusus is introduced, which is part of a usufructory system, which is why I say it's us you fruct when we're being fruct for our fruits. Usus, fructus, and abusus. And then I didn't know about the quasi-usufruct, which is actually the relationship that is that the whole construct is premised off of. Which, how do you premise something off of a relationship if it's not bound? Well, you contract the states of unlimited energy or substance in order to then say, this is the box that you're in, and this is the box that you're in, to box us in and capitalize us in our consciousness. So we buy the lies that the professionals try to say are true, and we don't know how to contest until we learned how to win the contest together by coming together as we have done this morning. So I am going to call the meeting here. Unless there is anyone else that has a final word you would like to share for this Unboxing Day special that has been incredibly special indeed. No words. Say it all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for showing up, each of you. We're going to do another one on December 28th, which is Thursday night at 7 o'clock. That one is going to be, I thought I was going to do it on what's in a name so that we could bring in the Roman nomenclature. And then I saw that I had written something else. So I can't quite tell you what the topic is without it being a false advertisement potentially, because I'm not quite clear. All I do know is that the closer and nearer we draw to the fire, then the higher the fire within our own hearts gets stoked. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here today, sharing your team with us, because you matter in so many ways. Words cannot express the positive resonance within me of your Boxing Day gift. Yay! How exciting. Yay. Thank you. Amazing, guys. All right, perfect. And when I say guys, every time I hear it, now I hear disguise, like the disguise of the masks that we wear. So anytime I hear, okay, guys, and then I think about disguise. So if you want to know where my head goes, now you do.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. When we see just how easy it is to have a slip of the tongue, then we can have some fun by learning to master our words and see that our pens are the ones that we can use to right wrongs that need to actually have rights claimed in order to have any standing in a matter, rather than just statusing and posing and pretending that something is real when it is not. So we need to stop kneeling to entities to be knighted with a title, status, position, personage, or identity that changes our sense of identity, our sense of self-image, in order to then bring in that whole concept of what it means to have that role and what's required in order to keep it, and whether we are committed to keeping it at whatever it costs, or whether we see that the loss of our soul for the sake of gaining worldly treasures are large measures to protect ourselves against, because the soul is so much more precious whole, which is why as we go through all of this, we're actually calling back soul fragments. And it's a crazy idea if it's new to you, but I can make it fun for you to do the inner work in good company, with a little bit of pleasure, of the joyful kind, innocence kind, the inner sense kind, the one where we remind ourselves of what we really are as the all-embodied. You are the individuated expression of the grand overall designer that fragmented into many spectrums of experiences that we live out with our lives. And then we start to see that together we make up the web of interconnectivity, the dots we connect. The dot connector is not about the information at all, for it is us in formation that would allow us to actually bring about the change we seek in this world, where we must distinctly see the difference between a dominion and domain, and how we can lay claim to what we have dominion over within the domains that we say we have reign over, unless someone else can step forward with a superior claim to our own. Otherwise, within the fictitious realm, men and women can only make complaints and arguments about one another. That is below and beneath us if we are willing to stop believing suits come with an air of respect about them, because the uniform has made us conform to the forms that would form our consciousness and make us forget our conscience. But we are the conscience of the courts and the corpse that we work for, which is why it is important to remember that corporate entities are where we extract identities that make us feel like we are part of something bigger than ourselves, and that matters to us on a deep, fundamental, and core level, because the core is where the heart is. And the heart of matters is who matters to us. Do I matter to you? Do you see me? Can you hear me? Do I matter? Are the questions we're all asking. Is what Oprah Winfrey said after all the interviews she had done with people of all walks of life. She said, every single one of them, did I do okay? Wanted to know. Can you give me some approval? Validation, affirmation? Please, Oprah seemed to be the mistress of the virtual TV reality domains. Well, domain and dominion are not the same, for we have dominion over the uncapitalized land, air, and waters of these worlds that we live on and in, because worlds are the different versions of reality based on identity that we have in that space. So the domain of our grocery store where I worked, for instance, and created some haters and also fans because of how I dealt with the man that forced me to sign medical disclosure that I was unable to wear a mask because I chose to take responsibility for my health despite having a doctor who refused to sign notes for anyone, allegedly. And so it was that then I was coerced to sign a notice that would leave. I had to leave basically January 15th, 2021, because a man that has been in the same position for more than a decade has a stronghold there, and basically a big, huge share of his identity from working there. And so it is that the floodgates open and we say we're all going to pay for our choices to cause other men and women harm, loss by participating in fraud, like what I told him and the woman acting as front-end manager that who had to bear witness to the whole experience, exchange, that they were partaking. And bullying has bystanders that stand by passively while others are harmed, and it's not okay, for they are as guilty as the one that is causing the harm to an extent. Though, of course, the bully is just trying to steal power from one that he or she deems to be weaker than themselves, than us. If we are the bully in someone else's story, but if we have been bullied and feel the victim, we must see that being victimized does not mean we must wear the suit of the victim. Do you see how the identity would overtake us if we'd let it? And with it come all of the identities of the paradigm, which are the energies that carry all of the rest of that which is connected to it, which is a lot, like the baggage of Santa Claus, Satan Claus, that claws at us during the harvesting of Christ Mass and the holidays season, where we are in a daze about what days of the week it is, for we have been covering our third eye in order to deny the truth that was written in the hearts of men, for it was not written in a language we could read, and so it was indeed us who need to learn how to decipher our own intuition. So now that I brought in my Gaelic accent, I'm going to say I got to go. Lord J, namaste, namako for today.